Good afternoon, everyone. I am Nick Azzara, N-I-C-K-A-Z-Z-A-R-A. I'm the Information Outreach Manager for Manatee County, also the Public Information Officer. Every year we try to have a media day to maintain good relationships with our media partners, but also for you guys to test out your equipment and make sure we have your contact information up to date. So typically we do that before hurricane season starts, but this year we're starting a little bit later for good reason, I believe. During the latter half of May and early June, I spent some time with our purchasing division, finalizing a contract arrangement with King Interpreting. They are our new American Sign Language interpreting provider, and I'm happy to report that from now on, King will be our partner whenever we have to activate the Emergency Operations Center for severe weather and emergency notifications going to the public. King will be on hand really in a short phone call away. We can call King, we can text King, we can email King, and they'll have one of their contracted interpreters within the area come to the EOC on very short notice and stay with us throughout the duration of a storm. So part of, again, the reason for the delay for Media Day this year was to finalize our agreement with King, but it was also to give our Public Works team to get our new sandbag machines. They purchased them, I believe, in April or May. It took a little time for them to be shipped from somewhere in the Midwest, I believe. But one of those sandbag machines is here today. We'll talk a little bit about that here in a few minutes. But the most important messages today we're going to concentrate on with Chief Sherilyn Burris and Dan Noah. And those are some of the lessons that we learned this past hurricane season, especially or specifically during Hurricane Irma. You know, the public, I think, did a great job of monitoring our media partners and following the county's social media accounts and the news that we were putting out on the web. And they understood when the time came the importance of evacuating their homes. We had a 95% occupancy rate at our emergency shelters. So one of the key messages that we're focusing in on this hurricane season is knowing whether your home is safe enough to shelter in place. And Chief Burris will go through some of the specifics on what you need to know if you're not in an evacuation zone, whether it's safe enough to shelter in place or whether you truly need to go to a friend or neighbor's home, and then, of course, as a last resort, one of our emergency shelters. We'll let each of the speakers say a few words, and I'll ask you just to save your questions till the end, and we'll answer those as they come in, okay? Thanks. So I'll hand it over to Dan Noah. I'll leave your credentials to yourself. He's a meteorologist with the National Weather Service.
Thank you, Nick. Last name is Noah, like the Ark, N-O-A-H. So here we are again. 9 out of 10 hurricane fatalities in the United States is related to water. Half of those are from storm surge. 1 in 4 of those are from flooding rain. The others are at the beach. If you can avoid water and keep the wind out of your house, you're going to survive that hurricane. Now, unfortunately, what happens most often is more people die after the storm than during the storm. We had 83 fatalities at last count in Florida during Irma and after Irma. 17 of those were people falling off of roofs or out of trees, cleaning debris or hanging shutters. We had 16 heat stroke victims. We had 14 carbon monoxide poisonings. So it is actually more dangerous sometimes after the storm than during the storm. Now, the way the warning program works in our country is we issue the forecast and communicate the impacts to emergency management. They plan for, respond to, and recover from the event. And we rely on our third partner, you and the local media, to communicate the threat to your audience so they know how to protect themselves and their families. So it's really great to see everybody out here today. One last note, 3 of the 5 costliest hurricanes in U.S. history occurred last year. Hurricane Harvey, Maria, and Irma racked up more than $250 billion worth of damage. And that's a record for our country. And I'll turn it over to Sherilyn.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sherilyn Burris, and I'm the Chief of Emergency Management here. And those are some pretty terrifying figures. Daniela, thank you. But that really brings up some of the important messages that our community really needs to know ahead of time. And that is, the things we tell you to do to prepare for the storm is not just necessarily for this storm, but for those weeks following. So one of our biggest issues in Hurricane Irma was, is it safe to stay home, or do you need to evacuate? Those are things that you need to know today. Don't wait until a storm is heading our way to talk about your plans with your friends and family, to understand what hurricane evacuation levels are, to understand what level your home is in and your evacuation destination is in. If you don't live in one of those hurricane evacuation levels, today, and well before the storm comes, get your home ready to shelter in place. And that means that you install hurricane shutters, window and door protection, backup generator power, and all of the other items that makes your home safer to stay and shelter in place. The other things are identifying places in your home where you can store your outdoor patio furniture so it will be safe from becoming a wind-borne projectile. And talk about your family readiness plan with your neighbors as well. Maybe you have a very good plan, but your neighbors might need a little more help. Make that preparation part of things that you do every day. Remember that hurricane season is half of the year, every year, and that's equivalent to about 12 hours a day, every day. So these are messages that is just part of our daily lives living in Florida. Homeowners and renters insurance is one of the most critical ways you'll be able to financially recover after a disaster, and that is something that you need to do today. If a storm is heading our way, it is way too late to get insurance. And finally, ahead of the storm today, sign up for our alert and notification system, Code Red. Code Red will send you emails, phone calls, or text messages regarding our countywide activities, such as sheltering and evacuations. After the storm, this will also provide reentry information on when it's safe to go home, places that services will be available, and other information that's critical to your family plan. So how do we know whether it's safe to stay or whether we need to evacuate? Hurricane storm surge evacuation levels is the salt water from the Gulf of Mexico being pushed ashore. So we very often commonly see this on our barrier islands and places that have the most beautiful views out on our water. But you don't necessarily have to live in those areas to be vulnerable to freshwater flooding as well. What we saw in August of last year with inland freshwater flooding means that your home might be vulnerable to more than just storm surge. Consider that in your family plan, whether you stay or evacuate. If you live in a mobile home or a manufactured home anywhere in Manatee County, it is never safe to stay during high winds. Ultimately, if you live in a mobile home or a manufactured home, you must evacuate to a safe place. Because most of us are more comfortable with our friends and family, talk to those folks that you know outside of the evacuation level and plan to stay with them. We will open hurricane evacuation shelters for people that don't have a plan. Again, those are plans you all need to make today. So we will take additional questions, and I believe we'll also be able to talk about how to make sandbags in order to get your home ready for that storm surge and freshwater flooding.
Thank you, Chief Burris. Thank you to the media. We will open up here to questions in just a minute. Thank you guys, really, sincerely, for always taking the time to come to Media Day. We know sometimes other news arises, there's samurai sword wielding domestic disputes that you have to attend to, as occurred 3 years ago. But we waited. Hopefully there are no emergencies going on today, conflicting with Media Day. Thank you to all the PIOs in the back of the room who help distribute these messages whenever the time comes. Thank you to special guests in the audience. We have representatives here from Congressman Buchanan's office and Senator Nelson's office. They've always been extremely helpful to Manatee County whenever there have been local disasters and emergencies. Whenever they're called upon, they do whatever they can to help us. So without all of this great partnership, I don't think would be nearly as well prepared as a community, and our residents would not be as well informed on what to do, when to go places, and where to go when an emergency strikes. So all of those things said, I can talk a little bit about the sandbags. We're going to do a demo. I believe we're now at the hottest point of the day, so we're about to release everybody to go outside for the demo. But if you have any questions, we can answer those now, or yes, Dale?
Well, it's one thing I don't think you mentioned is what people should be buying, what stores have it in stock. There aren't long lines, blah, blah, blah.
Absolutely. Our hurricane evacuation guide or planning guide is that very large fold-out map, and there is a list of supplies on that. It's kind of what do you need to be self-sufficient for 7 days. And what we saw during Irma is, of course, everyone wants to go out at that last minute and get all of their bottled water and food, things that might be perishable that they may need, including medication. But one thing is, think about going camping for a week. What do you need to take with you? Well, you need to be able to have food, water, medicine, clothing, batteries, a way to communicate, and just other ways to be comfortable. So those are the items you need. It's especially important if you plan to stay home, the things that you're going to need to make any emergency repairs to your home as well, such as tarps or tools to mitigate any further damage to your home. Oh, yeah. That's extremely important. Our experience with Hurricane Irma and the widespread statewide devastation with power outages means plan to be without electricity for that week as well. So when you are making your plans for food and water, don't count on having your power back on immediately. That's why batteries are so critically important. Please don't use lighted candles if you do not have electricity. Battery-powered flashlights or solar flashlights are a good example. Yes?
Would you please expound on the importance of those that are special needs to register in advance?
Right. In the state of Florida, we are very lucky to have statewide legislation to help people that might need a little additional assistance during hurricanes. We call this our special needs registry. So if you have a medical need, for example, if you are reliant on medical oxygen, visit our website at mymanatee.org/emergency and sign up for the special needs registry well in advance. Don't wait until a storm is coming to register for assistance.
Can you talk a little bit about shelters and shelter capacity, pet-friendly shelters?
Absolutely. In the state of Florida, we evacuate out of storm surge, but we build shelters to withstand the wind. So a shelter can be any facility that is hardened. It could also technically be your home if your home is safe to shelter in place. In Florida, we utilize our public school buildings as hurricane evacuation centers or shelters to house mass numbers of people. One of our very interesting stories from Hurricane Irma are the people that have seen what happens on TV or saw what happened in Texas and showed up to a hurricane evacuation center type shelter expecting maybe a little more customer service friendly experience than they received. Emergency shelters in our public schools are designed to save your life. They are not comfortable, they can be crowded, and you'll need to bring all of your supplies with you. It's very important, and that's why I tell the people that I talk to, make sure if you have a plan, a good plan, to go stay with friends and family outside of that area. You'll be more comfortable.
Can I just get you to talk a little bit more about the decision to use King and how much that's going to cost the county?
Sure. I don't have the specific cost figures handy. I can get those to you after, Sarah. But in the spring, we were well underway with what's called an RFO, a request for options, and that it's similar to the RFP process, request for proposals, in that we let the business community know that we have a service that we would like to partner with a private sector partner on, and they make proposals to the county based on their business model. So there were 3 firms that submitted proposals as part of that process, and I spent time evaluating those proposals, and then we had representatives from each of the 3 companies come in and do presentations and explain why their business was most qualified. To me, from the beginning, from both their written materials and their in-person presentation, it was clear that although it's a new company, King has a unique business model that relies on an extensive network of contracted American Sign Language interpreters, and can be available on very short notice for an extended period. There are, in Florida, I believe King has somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 contracted interpreters, and there are 10 in the 2-county area, Manatee and Sarasota counties, several more just across the Skyway. So they offered, for me, the highest level of comfort that when we have another severe storm approaching, they can be called upon again in a variety of ways, whether I want to text them, email them, call them, and with very short notice, they can have a representative here from Manatee or Sarasota counties, and that is committed to being here throughout the storm. And so they were the clear standout. Pam?
This may be a silly question, but is the intent for King to appear like today for television broadcasts, or are they going to be providing services at the shelters as well? How does that exactly work?
No, this contract just pertains to our emergency communications efforts. In the past, I had not been involved with our sign language provider. We recognized the need after Irma for a new arrangement, and so that's how we ended up contracting with King, Pam, and it'll just be for emergency time communications with the public. There's a separate agency that does on-demand sign language interpreting for county commission meetings or court proceedings if requested. Yep.
Is the county planning, are there any changes emergency management has in its pocket, so to speak, going forward for the upcoming hurricane season in terms of like maybe how it opens shelters or anything like that, or just anything that would be of interest to the public in terms of changes?
We haven't made significant policy changes this year. Each storm is going to be different, and I know you guys hear me say every year storms have names because each one has a unique personality. So the next time we have a storm, it's not going to be like Irma. It might not be statewide. It might not be from that direction. It might carry different hazards, which will mean we implement different activities. So no, just this year, my goal, of course, is to try to be more realistic. When we tell folks, this is what you need in your kit, to follow that up with, this is what you need in your kit, and here is why you need it. In the state of Florida, we have done really well, decade after decade, of learning from each individual storm. But the next one that we have might be different, and just be prepared to be flexible. And with those messages, just for us in emergency management, to be more transparent about what the other side of that storm means.
Thank you again, everyone, for being here. Thank you to our special guests in the audience, for people, for the public, for taking these messages seriously. And I think a special thanks to Chief Burris, who, we've had some great emergency management chiefs in my time with Manatee County, each unique in their own way. But I believe Sherilyn's best at communicating with the public and with the media, and she's always been very open and forthcoming, and I think that's the reason we were successful during Hurricane Irma. So thank you, Chief Burris, and thank you guys for being here.